Hey everybody, Chris here, aka Dated. As you can see behind me, today we're going to be talking about my horror manga. As many of you, a very vocal many of you, know, I started a series about my horror manga probably half a year ago, maybe a year ago now, I don't even remember. And I was going to go through all my horror manga, shelf by shelf, and explain what I have, break it down author by author, and tell you a bit of the history of the manga and how you can find it yourself. I got through one video of that, never got around to doing the second one, and since then I've got a ton more manga, I've reorganized everything. It just made a lot more sense to restart the series, so that's what I'm doing. This is going to be episode 1. As you can see behind me, this is all of it. I'm only going to be looking at the Junji Ito stuff today, which is this shelf and half of this shelf. And after that, I'm going to go kind of moving my way down by, popular artists to the more obscure stuff, and give you guys the full breakdown of what's here. But this is all horror manga. This is not just my whole manga collection. This is just purely the horror stuff. So if you're a fan of horror manga and you want to know what's out there, how you can get it, what obscure things you can maybe look for, if you think you have a pretty complete collection and you want to find more stuff, you're going to find out about all of that in these videos. Not only do I have a lot of horror manga, I would say, in fact, I have, I would think, a complete English collection. I have at least one version of every English published horror manga. That, of course, being manga that is specifically designed to scare you or make you uncomfortable, something like that. I'm not counting things like, Tokyo Ghoul or, Death Note, something that has a horror element to it, or monsters, or just like edgy manga. I'm talking about like traditional, just purely about the horror manga. And that'll include works by artists who mainly make that type of manga, but may have branched out to other things. I probably have editions of their other work as well. But yeah, I've got pretty much every English thing you can get. I'm going to go through all of those, so if you're a completionist just looking to get all of the English horror manga that's out there, you're going to find out about all of it through this video. As well as if you want to know what interesting, obscure Japanese stuff you can get there is. You're going to find out about that in this as well. And I also have a number of signed items, a bunch of signatures. I've got figures and such that are related to horror manga, either figures of horror manga characters and scenes, or just general figures that are by those artists. So I'm going to get into all of that. And for this first video, it is the Junji Ito shelf. So I'll bring you in a little bit closer and I'll just go through each of the works that I have by Ito. Alright guys, so this is the Junji Ito shelf. So this is the entire shelf here, and basically this half of this shelf over here is all Junji Ito material. So I'm just going to go through what's on here, and I'm going to show you guys what I've got, tell you how I got it, and maybe give you a little bit of backstory about what it is exactly. So the first items on this shelf are all of the Viz kind of omnibus style collected works of Junji Ito. These are all currently in print, so I'm not going to pull them all out and show them all to you guys. They're pretty straightforward. They're things like Uzumaki, Tomie, Gyo, a lot of his more popular, longer format stories, as well as a lot of collected editions of a whole bunch of just short stories that he's put out over the years, some of his more popular material. There is also No Longer Human, which is another Viz published one. This one is not horror manga necessarily. This is Junji Ito's illustrations set to the story of another author. So this is something that's more for completion's sake. If you're just interested in horror manga and you see this one listed online, I would recommend picking up one of the other books before you would pick that up, because it's just not really horror. Moving down the line, we've got also Junji Ito's Cat Diary and Drifting Classroom. These, again, are currently published books that you can just go pick up. Junji Ito's Cat Diary, that's this one, is not necessarily horror. It's kind of like horror comedy. It uses a lot of Junji Ito's own tropes to make situations with his cats really funny. So if you like cats, pick this up. If you like horror, pick this up. If you like Junji Ito, pick this up. It's just a really good one. I think he's gone on record saying that this is, I believe, his most successful comic, which he said in a kind of bewildered way, I guess you could say, that he's been working on horror manga for so long, and he makes a comic about cats on a whim, and it outsells everything else. But this is popular for a reason. It's really funny and really adorable. So next up, we have a Japanese copy of Mimi's Ghost Stories. This is a series that I hope gets published in English soon, because I'm honestly surprised it hasn't already been. This is, I mean, it's a series of stories following a female protagonist named Mimi as she encounters various ghosts and other, like, horrifying entities, I guess you could say. It seems like something that would be popular in the West, similar to, like, Uzumaki. So I hope it gets picked up. I think it's a really good one. This is the Japanese printing that I have, just so that I have a copy of it until it comes out in English. It's got the original Obi strip on it. For those of you who don't know, these are very common in Japanese manga. It basically just advertises what this is, and sometimes it will say a bit about the book itself, or it'll advertise other works by that author that are coming out soon, or other books by that publisher. It's just a cool little thing to have. I try to get them when I can, and I try to keep them with the manga they came with. But yeah, this is a really good one. I recommend reading it, translated online if you can. It's really good. So this is the next Japanese volume that I have. I don't actually know the title of this one offhand, but this is a collection of Junji Ito's stories that are, and illustrations and things like that as well, not just manga, not just comics, but they're all centered around sort of teenage age school girls. It's kind of marketed at that demographic. This is a really cool book because not only does it contain a couple of stories in it, but it's mostly stories that have been written that Junji Ito's art accompanies, or just plain illustrations by Ito. So in that sense, it's kind of acts as like an art book. So even if you're a Western reader and you can't read Japanese, I would recommend picking this up just if you like his art, because it's kind of like a little art book. You can see it's just got some cool little pictures in it. These are more like almost character design type stuff. And these are stories that have these illustrations that have been created to accompany them. And then towards the end of the book, you'll find actual manga. This is the bathhouse, I believe it's called. You can find this in other compilations translated online. Yeah, just a very cool book if you're a fan of his art. Next up we have Museum of Terror, Volume 3. I've actually got 2 copies of this just because I found another one for a good price, so I picked it up, because it's not often you find these for a good price. I'll probably resell it or something at some point, or just hang on to it. I haven't decided. But this is a really, really, really hard to find book, and that is because it is an older book. It was published as part of a 3-book series, the first 2 containing Tomie stories. It's by Dark Horse, and this one is pretty expensive. I think I lucked out. I paid like $80 for this, maybe even less. Canadian dollars, so that's like $60 US. You're probably going to have to pay $150 or so for this if you want to pick it up nowadays. It's very expensive. You can sometimes find it with the first 2 volumes as well, so all the Tomie stories as like a lot, and you might get a better deal that way. If you need those stories still, that's the way I'd recommend getting this. But this is a really good series because it contains stories that have not been republished in any of the Viz collected volumes. So these are stories like the titular Long Hair in the Attic, a lot of Junji Ito's older stories, and some really good stories are in this one. So if you want to own all of Junji Ito's English published material, you need this book. It has things that are not anywhere else. Next up, we've got another rather rare one. This is Flesh-Colored Horror. This is the third volume from a different publisher, which also published the first 2 volumes of Tomie as volume 1 and 2 from this series. And then they got to the third volume, which was publishing additional short horror stories. And after that, it fizzled out and they stopped publishing them, which seems to be the trend for a bunch of these publishers. So this is even harder to find than Museum of Terror by a good bit. If you're looking to pick a copy of this up, expect to pay $150 to even $250 or even more, depending on when you want to buy this. There are times you could go online and try to find a copy of this and just not find any for less than like $1,000. Definitely don't pay $1,000 for this. It's not worth that much, but it is definitely worth hundreds. If you can find this for $100, pick it up, because it's not going to hang around forever. Someone will buy it. If you get really lucky, like I did, you can pick this up for even less. Mind you, I picked this up, I'd say, about 3 or 4 years ago now. I think it's a lot harder now that Junji Ito is more popular to find these books for cheap. I paid $40 Canadian for this, which is insane considering it's in really good shape. And I just did that by scouring eBay and sites like Abe Books and sites like that every day until I could find a copy, as well as a few other rarer volumes that I managed to find by doing that literally every day. And I got this within the hour. It was listed by, I believe it was Goodwill Books, and I got it for $40, which is crazy. This is another one that contains stories that have not been published anywhere else. This differs from the volume 3 of Museum of Terror in that the first 2 volumes were both collecting Tomie. However, they were both from different collected series that have come out in Japan. So there is, you can see down here, this is the Junji Ito collection. So this is a lot of his older works collected in 16 volumes. And that is the series that this is a translation of. Whereas there's another series which came out slightly later than this one, which also collects Junji Ito's older stories, but in a different order, and I believe with some variants in which stories are in it. And that series is what Dark Horse was translating when they did Museum of Terror. And that series in Japan was also called Museum of Terror. So this is from the Junji Ito collection series. This has stories that you will not find anywhere else published in English, so if you want to have a complete collection of English published Junji Ito stories, you need this book. Something interesting to note about this book is that it really is a product of its time. An interesting thing about it is that and I don't know if you'll be able to see it on the camera, I don't think it'll really come through, but the artwork is slightly lower resolution than any of the other volumes of any of Junji Ito's work. It almost seems like they got JPEG files or something of the art and they just used that to print, which is kind of funny. It works perfectly fine, it's totally readable, it still looks good, but it's noticeably a little bit pixelated, whereas the text is nice and crisp, so they did that right. And I've actually got the Japanese equivalent version of it here, and the Japanese printings are nice and clear and look great, so it's clearly an issue that Comics One, the publisher for this, had. They just did not do a good job printing the art. Which, to me, honestly, adds a bit of charm to this. It's kind of just a fun thing. It makes it feel even older and weirder and more obscure. It's also interesting that underneath the slipcover, whereas on the Viz volumes and stuff, you have all this cool black and white art, on this it's just plain text, nothing too fancy. Spine is really boring. And then on the front, it's just the black and white version of the cover. Plain white insides on the cover. It's an old comic, man. And this is also a product of its time. The fact is that it has been reversed. So it actually starts from the regular North American front cover to the back, as opposed to reading it in reverse order like Japanese manga is and most translated manga nowadays is. They actually mirrored all of the artworks so that you could read it front to back. I have also the Tomie from that same series. This is volume 2 from that series. I'm not particularly concerned about owning every different version of Tomie. I'm not going to get the Museum of Terror versions and this and that. but I just found this for a good price, so I picked it up. So this just gives you an idea of what the Tomie version or printing from that same series looks like. It's the same Comics 1. It also has the same slightly blurry artwork, which is kind of funny. This is without a doubt the rarest version of Tomie, but also the worst version of Tomie. If you're just looking for a copy to read, get the Viz one. It's bigger, the art's clearer. If you just want it for collection purposes, this is the most expensive version of Tomie that you could buy. It's the most collectible, so it's just interesting for that reason. Maybe one day I'll get volume 1, who knows. Moving on to some oddities, I have here, it's a game for the Wonder Swan, which is a console in Japan, a handheld console that's black and white like the Game Boy original. This is basically like a video game version of an audiobook. You like play through a text-based game with like sprite illustrations, and it's an adaptation of the whole manga. The artwork on this is pretty unique. I don't think this artwork exists anywhere else, so it's pretty cool to have for that reason. That was the main reason I wanted to get this, especially with the box. Looking at the game itself, it's this little cartridge, this little case that's on it that comes off, and it's got this little booklet. Just a cool little oddity to have. I don't have the console to play it on, and I'm not particularly interested in getting it because I can't read Japanese anyways. But yeah, looks nice on the shelf as a fun little thing. Next up, we have a promotional bookmark for Smashed. Kind of a weird, obscure little thing to have. I bought it on eBay after the promotion ran. I think I paid like 30 bucks for this, which is honestly a lot for a bookmark. It's probably not even worth that. But I think it's just one of those things that once the few that have gone up online have sold after these promotions run, you're probably just never going to see them again. So I wanted to get one just to have it. It's just a neat little thing to have. Next, we have the Suichi Pop figure. This is the first Junji Ito Funko Pop that has come out. There are a number of additional ones that have been made recently. I've got them all on pre-order. I'll probably do a video about them when they come in. There's 4 regular ones that have come out and 1 exclusive Books A Million one that's come out, so there's 5 more in addition to this. But this is the one I have right now. This is the 2020 Fall Convention Limited Edition. There's also a Comic-Con version of this. The only difference is just what the sticker says. I don't know which one's necessarily rarer. I'd imagine the Comic-Con one probably is, but very cool to have. Next up, we have these art books. These are the Twisted Vision Junji Ito art book. I have the English and the Japanese version. The only reason for that is because I bought the Japanese version as soon as it came out, because it's an art book, so you don't really need it in English. And then Viz shortly after announced that they were going to be translating it and releasing their own English version, so I eventually bought that, and it's a nice hardcover version, so it's definitely the better version to have. But I've just got the 2. Why not? Pretty cool to have. Really great artwork in these. There's a lot of his, like, I believe he uses acrylic for his paintings, a lot of full color artwork in this, a lot of his cover art. Just a really, really, really good art book. Definitely grab this if you like Junji Ito's art. Next up down the line, we've got the Junji Ito collection on DVD. You can get this on DVD and I think also Blu-ray. I just grabbed the DVD copy because I don't have a Blu-ray player. This is just the DVD copy of the Junji Ito collection anime. It's a pretty polarizing series. I'm not the biggest fan myself. I think it doesn't do justice to the source material. But for completion's sake, I picked up a copy. Next up, we have some more Japanese volumes. This is Black Paradox. This is a series that is yet to be translated into English. I just wanted to have it just for the sake of completion. This is not my personal favorite Junji Ito story. I think it's actually probably one of my least favorite Junji Ito stories. It's one of those ones where he kind of leans into that sci-fi territory, and I honestly don't feel he's the strongest when he goes in that direction, both with this and things like Hellstar Ramina. I think he does his best work with sort of supernatural, atmospheric, themed horror like Tomie, Uzumaki, Lovesick Dead, Oshikiri, things like that. But nevertheless, still have it. I also have this Japanese printing of Smashed before it came out in English. It was just one I had for the sake of completion. I'm pleased to say now it's available in English, and it's a really fantastic compilation. So definitely pick up the English version if you want to read some good Junji Ito short stories. So next, you'll see this long stack of books here. This is the Junji Ito collection. This is a full set of the Japanese printing of this set. The English version of this set only goes up to volume 3, as I mentioned before. That's the flesh-colored horror series. This is the full Japanese set. I'll just pull a random one out so you can take a look at it. It looks very similar to the English versions of it. This collects all of Junji Ito's stories that were available at the time that this was published, which I believe was late 90s, maybe early 2000s. So it's all of his older material. This series goes up to the Lovesick Dead or Intersection Pretty Boy series. So pretty old stuff. That's a fairly old story. This set, if you want to get a set for yourself, I would recommend going to a site called Mandarake, or Mandrake, however you want to pronounce it. But they are an online retailer of manga and figurines and things like that from Japan. You can buy a set of this for, the equivalent is probably about $40 US. You'll probably pay another $40 in shipping and import fees, so you can get this whole set after everything for like $80, as opposed to buying it on eBay where you're probably going to have to pay $150 to $300 for a set of this. It just makes way more sense to buy it directly from Japan. That's what I did, and that's how much I paid, and I know you can still go find it to this day on that website. So go check out Mandarake if you want a set of this. Even if you can't read Japanese, it's a great set to have because it's really cheap for the amount of manga that you get, and the art is just as beautiful as ever. And if you've read these translated online, you can flip through these no problem and just, pseudo-read them. Next up, we've got these volumes of Tomie. These are just like a collected omnibus from Japan. These I literally bought just because of the cool spine where they connect to make Tomie. And I just thought they looked really nice, and they were dirt cheap. I paid like maybe $2 each for these volumes, and I'm pretty sure you can still get them from that price. These are like just a really cheap, like lower quality paper, almost like newsprint sort of printing. So these are, just cheap newsstand stuff from Japan for the sake of getting the work out there, as opposed to having the prettiest volume. In Japan, they definitely have more of a, I guess you could call it like a disposable culture for manga. There isn't so many people doing what I've done and just collecting everything and keeping everything they've bought. They'll just buy cheap versions of some manga and then donate them to the library after and things like that. So that's kind of what these are. They're just cool to have. They look nice. Next up, we have a collected version of Hellstar Rumina. This also has been translated by Viz recently into English. I got this before then, just for the sake of completion. Not my favorite Junji Ito manga, but definitely one of his more iconic ones, I guess you could say. So pretty cool to have. Next we have a pocket-sized volume of Whispers in the Dark, as it was called in Japan. You'll know it better as Smashed. You can see the artwork on the back there that was used in the English version. I also have the larger version of this, but this was just a cool little pocket-sized one that I got before the English translation came out, so just a cool thing to have. Didn't cost a lot, so threw it into an order. Next we have this Free Comic Day Viz issue of The Drifting Classroom that also features Junji Ito story from Smash. So this is just like a fun little oddity that I wanted to have. It's not often you'll see this format, this sort of like traditional Western Marvel DC comic style comic of horror manga, and it's got some Junji Ito in it. So picked this up online very shortly after the event ran. I don't know if you can still get these now or what they cost. I haven't looked, but I'd imagine they're somewhat scarce and are probably going to get scarcer. Next up, we have definitely an oddity. This is a series of, I think I'm holding it upside down. this is a series of reference documents that were used in the creation of the Junji Ito collection anime. So these are basically photocopied images that are the reference images that all the animators in the studio would use to make sure that they're depicting everything accurately and consistently. So you'll find everything in here from character sketches, including with like different lighting and stuff, to random objects like a phone, to full layouts of houses that people live in, and drawings of landscapes and illustrations of all the creatures and such. Just really cool to have. These are, you know, not as rare as original art or anything. These are literally just photocopies, but there are only so many of these as there were animators at that studio. So a very interesting oddity to have. I eventually want to get them moved into some like clear pages and put into a binder. They're like longer, almost like legal size sheets of paper, so a little tricky to do, but I'll go through and show you guys some cool pages from it so that you can get an idea of what's in here. So the first batch of pages are like landscapes, references for different locations, both like outdoors and indoors. Sometimes it's even just the same image with very slight variations. I'm not even sure what the variation is here. Sometimes there just changes to like one feature or the lighting. You see a view down the street there. Moving on to some interiors, you can see here they'll depict a scene from the comic, and they'll use that as the reference for building the layout of the room so that they can imagine it in a 3D space and draw all the angles that they need. And so you'll see there's another full illustration of an exterior. Again, full layout of a house with some panels from the manga that they use as the reference to decide on the layout for the interior so that they can stay consistent. So as much as the series didn't capture everything from the anime or from the manga quite accurately, you can see they really put a lot of work into making sure that they were accurately depicting everything from the manga. Just another nice looking exterior shot there. Moving on to some character art, you can see their character reference sheets, including different mouth positions, different facial expressions, close up on certain features like the eyes. They would even have ones with different lighting on them so you can see how the shadows would be cast. Some like full character height ones there. You can see another character here. Here's a popular one, the Slug Girl. That's a very cool one. It's even got these full cel-shaded colored images to use as reference. There's the toad from the Suichi story. One of the slug from Slug Girl. It's got an interesting expression on his face. So yeah, very cool little thing there. If you guys want to see more of these documents, let me know in the comments. I could do a full video eventually, maybe of me just flipping through each page so that you guys can see everything that's in here. Let me know if that's something you're interested in. Maybe once I get them collected into a proper binder or something, I'll do a quick video about that. So that brings us to the last item in my Junji Ito collection, and that is this Unbox Industries Junji Ito Frankenstein figure. So this is the box, and it's got this door on the front so you can open it up and see Mr. Frankenstein's monster here. It's a very cool figure, very detailed, very nice color. There are two versions of this that were available. You can get either this version, which is the full color version. It also comes with a little cloak that's in there that you can put on him. There's also a manga version of this that you can get, which is just like a black and white figure. I wanted to get the color one. I thought it matched the box art and all that a little better, but the other one is out there. So this one was pretty expensive. I think it's $150 US for one of these. You can still buy them now, I believe. So if you like this and you want one, go pick one up at the Unbox Industries website. This took, I think, literally 8 months to get to me due to the shipping delays that happened in China around when it was supposed to be sent to me. I imagine things are at least a little bit better now, hopefully. So if you do buy one of these, don't be surprised if you have to wait a really long time to get it. And if you want to get one of these faster on eBay or something, expect to pay $400 or more for one of them. They're pretty pricey on there, even though you can just go buy them from the website. So very cool item. I suspect they won't be in production for too much longer, so pick them up while you can. And I believe they're actually making some more Junji Ito figures soon. I think there's Miss Fuchi and Soichi are going to be coming out, and I believe they're going to be part of like a random pack that you can get a random figure out of. So a bit risky. Not sure if I'm going to get them myself. We'll see what the price is, but very cool nonetheless. So thanks for watching, guys. That has been just the Junji Ito items on my shelves. The next video I do will probably be a Hideshi Hino video, then maybe a Kazuo Umezu video, then Shintaro Kago, and onwards to other horror manga artists. Let me know who your favorite horror manga artist is in the comments, and who you're most looking forward to see out of this series. And if there's anything you guys want to see in particular in these series, or that you want me to talk about more, feel free to let me know, and I'll try to include it in the next one. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.